Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from Sogo Dash. Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from Sogo-Kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of the Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, Shu, how you doing over there?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Good.
My second corona vaccine shot today, so I passed out for about 7 hours. But
Really? I mean, did you get any side effect or whatever? I mean, the fever?
no, I was like really sleepy, so I went to sleep and it was like a long nap. It was like 6 hours, but I feel fine now.
I mean, as you know, Uruka Sasaki had the second vaccination day before the press conference, and he had a fever in the morning. So unfortunately, he couldn't make it to the RIZIN Cards press conference. Yeah, I mean,
they did like a temperature check at the door.
No, actually, what happened was Uruka is, I almost tell him it's almost his hobby to get fever. He gets fever pretty easy. And on the cold days in New York, me and his wife tells him, "You gotta wear a scarf. Gotta wear extra clothes." He's like, "I'm okay. I'm tough." He comes home next day, he gets fever, kind of stuff. I was concerned about that before the second vaccine, and I actually told him, "Are you okay?" And he says, "Like, I think I'm gonna get a fever next day," and that happened. Now, did you get a Moderna? Is that what's available?
That was the only option that we had, so I got the Moderna
really?
one. They're not really rolling it out with the government yet, my age group, but my wife, their employer, is doing it privately. So we were able to get it through my wife's job, but Moderna was the only option they had.
That's good. That's good, though. I mean,
it's fine.
I mean, I only had the Pfizer, which is a one-shot stuff, and I guess that doesn't work for Delta virus, whatever that is.
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows? So,
yeah.
But just so you know, I'm not supposed to be doing that. I wasn't supposed to be doing this, but 3 hours after I got a vaccine, I went to the Japanese izakaya and started drinking. I was like
celebration.
Drunk 5 hours later, and I'm okay. So,
Yeah,
but anyway, let's get to the additional card they announced. Well, what did they announce today? Let's see.
They announced. Yeah, they announced like Yachi was on there. They announced that
versus.
They actually announced. I mean, I thought the event was already pretty well put together.
Mm-hmm.
And they announced a bunch of like other really big fights, which was kind of surprising to me.
That is right. And what do you think? Which card actually caught the fans' attention the most? I think it would have to be Panchan. No,
I would say that
the Japanese fans.
I'd say that Panchan was kind of like the surprising one. It was like, oh, Panchan, because they've kind of been teasing that she would be part of RIZIN for a while now.
Okay.
But so it's like, oh, Panchan. But I think that people are probably most excited for either the Sasaki or the Takeda fight. Both of those seem pretty big.
All right, so let's talk about then, since it's about clients, Sasaki versus Jorge. What do you think about this one?
I think it's a big fight. I mean, Jorge's got a lot of hype going into it. Especially every time you see him or mentioned, they're always mentioning like former UFC fighter. Yeah. So the fact that he fought for the UFC is just added a lot of clout to his name. It's kind of like how Ayaka Hamasaki was the Invicta FC, like the North American MMA champion. Right. Well, he's kind of come back to represent like that caliber. So I think that kind of adds to the mystique of his name.
Yeah.
So when people see the UFC next to his name, they immediately respect him as a fighter.
Sure. But although I have to mention he's one of the rare cases that he got released from UFC just a one fight.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
That is weird.
Do you know anything about that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't talk so much about it because he's not my client. But he did take that fight on a last-minute offer. So I don't know why that happened, because usually any management who will take that kind of offer at least will verbally make sure with the matchmaker that, hey, listen, I'm going to tell my client to take this. But if he loses, I don't want you to cut him immediately. At least give him a second chance. And UFC is really good about that, actually. They do usually give a second chance to guys who took on a last-minute offer.
Yeah, they seem to treat people, at least from the outside, they seem to treat people that take last-minute fights better than those that don't.
Mm-hmm.
But
right, and it's not like he missed a weight or anything. And I think he was less aggressive than I think the matchmaker expected, I think.
Okay.
Still, that shouldn't be the reason to just cut him off, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one fight's not enough to tell anything. The guy's still getting comfortable in a new promotion.
Right.
So
now I'm going to mention this. This is the luxury the UFC has because most of the other promotions in North America, except the Bellator, PFL, whatever, they got the big budget. But to get a P1 visa for non-American fighters, it will cost at least $6,000, $7,000 legal fee. Yeah. So they can afford to do that, and a local show or like feeder shows they would never be able to do.
Yeah. So so what you're saying is like if a promotion like Invicta FC was to get one of those visas, they'd want to get some mileage out of the fighter and not just cut them for one fight.
See, the good thing about the American visa system, if you're on a 2-year contract, if you pay $6,000, $6,000, $7,000, legal fee, all kinds of stuff, and get a visa, that visa lasts durations of that contract usually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you can get them exactly mileage out of them. But in the UFC, I guess they don't care.
No, apparently not. That's kind of weird. But even so, just the fact that he fought in the UFC just one time, still just. Mm-hmm. They slap those 3 initials next to his name whenever they write his name up.
Exactly.
So it kind of makes the fight bigger. And Sasaki's already a really big. I think he's already one of the more popular fighters in RIZIN. He's kind of branded himself uniquely with his whole Lazy God clothing line and with his hair and his entrances.
Pretty good, fair fan base. Fair fan base. But I'm telling you this. I think for those who's listening to our podcast, I feel like I got to give you a couple of scoops here. That I give you one inside story that actually originally the fight RIZIN offered to Uruka Sasaki was not against Jorge.
Oh, really?
Masanori Kanehara.
Okay.
Going up on 145, so they wanted to see, who was better. They're both veterans and blah blah blah. But we actually didn't like it, so as Uruka, because he's coming up to 145, coming back up to 145, I should say, because he had a few 145 fights in Shuto, early days in Shuto. But what's the point of fighting another guy who's coming up from the bantamweight?
That's true. Doesn't prove anything.
Doesn't prove anything. So we're like, no, we don't like that one. Mm-hmm. And actually, Jorge was supposed to fight another Japanese guys on later show in October, which is the show that Sakakibara already announced, right? In Yokohama in October. Right. But for some reason that didn't come through. So that's why, therefore, we ended up in this two of the UFC veterans fighting each other in the matchmake, which I think it's ended up being better.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, good for your client because this is probably going to be the bigger card because I can't imagine them putting another huge card together right before their New Year's Eve card.
Right.
So, yeah, this is going to be a big show.
Right. And the way we see this fight is that Jorge is a good striker, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of reach, Uruka has advantage. And if you're careful about Jorge's right straight, that right punch that also knocked down the Tetsuya Seki on his previous fight, I think odds are better for Uruka.
Uruka's got to have a ground advantage, you'd think, right?
Yeah. And on top of that, remember that Tetsuya Seki, who trains with Naoki, who is also a friend of Uruka, obviously they all be training together. And, they come up with a game plan. Tetsuya knows exactly, what Jorge is like. So, well, let's see, But also, I will give you this another scoop. Although you mentioned that Uruka has a fan base and, like how popular in Japan and blah, blah, blah. Actually, Sakakibara is not too impressed with him at all.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You know why? Because he likes the fighters who can finish fights. That's a really a priority for him. And for 4 fights in RIZIN so far, Uruka hasn't been able to finish anyone. Mm-hmm. Although he beat Manel Cape, who has win over Asakura and, former champion, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it really matters at this point. I think he needs to finish this one.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the promotions over here, even the US, just a lot of promotions prioritize finishes. especially when they're trying to get their TV ratings up. It's like not a pay-per-view system. They're trying to get people interested in it.
And I'll tell you this, I think many of the North American fans, they probably kind of expect most of the fighter gets show money and win bonus, right? That actually applies to most of the probably non-Japanese fighters. In terms of Japanese fighters, they prefer to negotiate in a way that little higher show money, but in return, only the finish bonus. Meaning if you win fights, you don't get anything extra. You gotta finish it. And that's actually that kind of makes sense, and I understand that's the philosophy of the promoter of the promotion. You know, so you have to know what you walk into in a way when you're dealing with the RIZIN. But actually, it's a fair deal. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's two philosophies. I've heard a lot of people complain about the win lose bonus in the the win bonus structure in the UFC before. So it's interesting to see promotions try other things. I just can't stop laughing right now, though, because the picture you have pulled up, Kubo is dressed ridiculously in the background. He's wearing like a ridiculous tuxedo, like a high school prom.
Exactly. Actually, when he walked into the press conference for a moment, I couldn't recognize him. I thought he was kind of ridiculous comedian. I'm like, all right, who is this guy? You know, then I realized, oh, yeah, that's him, you know?
It looks absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what he was thinking.
Exactly. So the next, you say another card that the fans are excited is Takeda?
I think the Takeda Yachi fight was kind of a surprise to me.
Okay.
Because Yachi has, I mean, I say it's a surprise in that it's not that I didn't expect the fight to get made. It's just, it felt like this event already had a lot of big stars on it.
Right.
And Yachi's a huge name. And he has a lot of, he brings the Yogibo sponsorship. His girlfriend's a famous actress. He has a huge social media following. Right. And kind of hide him in the undercard of this kind of almost seemed like a waste. But I mean, it makes the card even better. So I think it's great. But I was kind of expecting it to go on one of those cards that they were talking about in between the December card.
You know what? This is what I'm telling this. Another, actually, I'm going to give you a little small scoop to our listeners here that I think Koji Takeda is more interested in fighting outside Japan.
Right.
I think he's mentioned that more than a few times. And out of the matchmakers in North America or the other countries I've spoken with, you know, like we casually talk about, of course, other than our clients, you know, like we're general Japanese MMA, oh, who you think the next guy that UFC will pick him up, you know, that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
The two fighters actually always mentioned in that conversation is Koji Takeda and Shinryu Makoto. I think it seems like a lot of matchmakers here likes the fighter with a strong wrestling base. you know?
Well, I think you got to have that wrestling base to succeed in a North American promotion.
Right.
Because if you don't, it's just such a giant disadvantage.
Yeah, it is. And although Takeda is not exactly too young, I think there will be opportunity outside Japan if he wins this fight.
Well, I mean, it's also one of those things, like his last fight with Kume was so exciting. I mean, it was a crazy. It was like it was what you'd want. They booked a fight with champion versus champion. They fought each other. It was back and forth. It's kind of an insane fight that he started to take over as the fight went on near the end, but it was still a crazy back and forth fight.
Right.
And when you do that kind of fight, people take notice.
Oh yeah.
So that's probably, I mean, that elevated his stock more than anything he's done before.
Right.
And so a lot of the RIZIN fans, I think, are interested to see what he does next.
I think fans voting wise, I think that fight was picked the best of the show, right? I think it was the.
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, I can't see why it wouldn't be. It was a crazy fight.
Right.
And I thought it was one of those rare fights where both fighters, even though Kume lost, I thought he looked great in it. And I'd like to see him back in RIZIN.
And this is what I predict because, like I said, you know how the Bellator has a very good relationship with RIZIN. Unless promotions like PFL or ONE steps in, I have a feeling we will see Koji Takeda next year in Bellator.
That'd be great.
Or somewhere outside Japan, if he wins this fight.
I mean, especially if Bellator wants to come back to Japan and do another one of those shows, I could see him taking part.
Right. But on the other end, this boy, Mr. Yusuke Yachi, I still think he's kind of on the edge because if he loses this fight, what is he like a 4 losses in last 5 kind of stuff, right? Like 3 losses in last 4, whatever, you know?
I like Yachi, but I mean, I think a lot of people thought too much of his last win.
Yeah, I think so. To give him too much credit. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he's a brand new fighter. He's completely changed everything up and all this stuff. And I'm just thinking, like, is he? I mean,
No.
even even Chael Sonnen choked out Shogun on his way out. So I mean, every once in a while, one of these fighters near the end of their career is going to pick up a random win. And he played that fight very safe. And I mean, Takeda, Yachi still has knockout power, so he could always win that way. But Takeda in the Kume fight put on a relentless pace.
Yes.
That fight he was in his face, he was aggressive. And if it had been anybody but Kume, I think that fight would have been over in the first or second round.
Oh, I agree.
And so Yachi's going to have to deal with that pace. And I just have flashbacks of like the Souza fight, where when people push Yachi, he makes mistakes and they're able to capitalize on it.
Right.
I think he likes to be the one dictating the pace.
Yeah, exactly. It's too bad. I always said I don't know why Yachi is fighting at 155. Now, remember, a lot of people don't remember this, but Yachi at 145 fought Alexander Volkanovski, the current UFC featherweight champion.
Yeah, was that in the PFL? Where was that?
PXC in Guam.
PXC, yeah.
And he took Alexander to a 4th round. I mean, I really think his best weight class is still at 145.
Yeah, and plus I think it's kind of just unfortunate to say athletics is kind of cruel, maybe a little too late.
Yeah.
When he tried to change up his style and everything, he's already taken a lot of damage.
Yeah, so I really think if he loses this one, I really think he should consider going down to 145 because there's more going on in there in terms of rising, featherweights. And I mean, if he win one, he could still even fight Mikuru Asakura, which would be a big fight in Japan.
Right. Plus, another thing with him is I'm wondering about his training because he left Crazy B. He's doing like this I think he's doing like what they call free training in Japan.
Yeah.
I really think he needs to be part of an established gym with like an actual coach and trainer helping him out.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so I hope, he will do well, but,
yeah, me too.
But it's going to be tough, I think, Now, another one I'm actually interested in, this boy, Shinobu Ota.
Yeah.
He's fighting another Rise kickboxing fighter, right?
Right. No, is Kubo, isn't he K1?
Oh, his K1. It was K1, I'm sorry, Kubo, yeah. Yeah, K1. Now, what do you think about this one? Now, for those North American fans who doesn't know too much about Kubo, he's known for a man who has, made successful investment on some stock market or something like that. Is he like a trader? Yeah. But he lost after that kind of stuff?
I know him. Kubo, you mean? I think I know Kubo more from his, weren't he and his brother kind of like K1 fighters back in the day? I mean, that's like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my friend about it earlier, and they kind of made it sound like, because Kubo was a big deal when he was in K1, but then when he left K1, it was kind of like unceremonious, like people didn't really talk about it. And K1 didn't make a big deal about it. And I just feel like this is a crazy fight for a kickboxer to take. Isn't Ota like an Olympic wrestler?
Yeah, this is a crazy fight, actually.
I mean, could we see Gianotsu versus Shinya Aoki flying knee knockout? Yeah, that's possible, but I think 9 times out of 10, the Olympic wrestler is going to dominate this.
9 out of 10, more like a 99 out of 100 or whatever.
And Ota looked good in his first fight. I think he's just inexperienced. So I think Rising's trying to get him a win against an established name.
Yeah, I could see that.
And this is the way to do it.
Kubo is known, and he's actually pretty active on social network, right? Twitters and everything else. And I don't know really too much about Kubo, so I shouldn't talk about it. But my wife knows about Kubo's wife. Is Kubo's wife something weird or strange? I guess
I haven't heard about that. That's interesting.
I guess I got to do a little bit more research. But she says, "Oh, that's the guy with the strange wife, right?" I'm like, really? So there's a world out there that I don't know anything about.
Because I don't really follow K1 as the K1's kind of on the periphery of what I follow, pay a lot of attention on.
Right.
But especially since he left, I haven't been paying that much attention. But
Right, but
now you've piqued my interest with this wife stuff.
Exactly right, and and also Shoji versus another guy. I see like this trend of MMA fighter against kickboxer going on here.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's a thing. I mean, it's not really a trend. I mean, Japanese MMA has always loved the MMA fighter against kickboxer trope, kind of like sink or swim. And I think people might like, but I was telling my friend earlier, like Bay Noah was kind of the exception, and that he outperformed how a kickboxer should perform in an MMA debut. But I think that's because Bay Noah actually does jiu-jitsu training on the side, whereas I think either one of these K1 guys gets down to the ground, it's going to look really bad.
Let me tell you this. Old Japanese fans are always talking about one fight when you come to MMA fighter versus kickboxer, which is Mirko Krokop versus Kazuyuki Fujita. Remember that one?
I do, yeah. Yeah.
You could shoot in, and I think Mirko nailed him with the one knee shots. That
I remember because
Fujita's forehead wide open,
There was like a popular like it's kind of like the Onion and a website called crack.com.
Mm-hmm.
And like 10 years ago, they had a whole article about Fujita and how his nickname was Ironhead.
Yeah.
And the entire thing was leading up to the Krokop fight, how the knee was like behind the knee was every punch he had ever taken in his career or hit him at once. And it just broke Fujita.
But do you know the story behind that fight?
No, I don't.
Let me tell you this. This is actually pretty interesting. Do you know who was supposed to corner Fujita for that fight?
The pro wrestler, isn't he? So it's someone from a pro wrestling background.
A former UFC fighter who has a pro wrestling, went on to do a pro wrestling. A man named Mr. Brian Johnston. Remember?
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to corner, but he didn't on that fight. Do you know what happened?
What happened?
Right before he made a walkout, Fujita made a walkout, Brian Johnston had a cardiac arrest. So they had to take him to the hospital and everything else. Therefore, Fujita was not in the right frame of mind. All he thought about was just finish this fight real quick so I can go to the hospital. So he just shot in from the far. He didn't even like step in, try to set up a position, nothing. He just shot in. Because he knew I'm just gonna take this guy down and it's But what happened was he just took a shot. So nobody thought about that. Nobody wrote about this. This is actually a story behind that fight, and I wish, maybe we should tell this website, who wrote that article 10 years ago.
Wait, so I just looked up the Kubo stuff, and it seems kind of crazy. It says that he makes like $200 million a year investing. 200 million yen a year investing. Yeah, exactly. And
he's famous about it. He lost it, no? No? Is that what it is?
Well, this is from 2020. He might have lost it, but it also says that he got divorced, then remarried his wife.
Okay, right. That's what it is. I think that's why my wife is interested in that. Yeah. I think we did a little research. We can talk about it on our next episode. Yeah, this guy's
bring that up next time.
Interesting. Yeah. I think regular general public of Japan actually recognize him as a investor and a strange wife instead of a K1 fighter. So
it's probably Sakakibara is all about we can talk about it later, but why is Panchan Rina in RIZIN?
Yeah,
she's really popular on social media.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because these guys are kickboxers. Now, obviously, RIZIN is establishing, has established some kickboxing divisions, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And now, obviously, it's just signed the Panchan Reina, which is a very, very popular girl with 9 fights, undefeated. Is what it is? Am I correct?
Yeah, she started fighting, I think, 2 years ago. She did some amateur fights before that, and she fought predominantly for a promotion called Knockout.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like one of the premier kickboxing promotions, but she has beat she beat Sasori, who's kind of like a pretty good fighter, who's kind of near the end of her career as well. But so she's undefeated. A little backstory: she tried to be a talent and an idol, and I think that just kind of fizzled out, and then she kind of transitioned to kickboxing. So she's kind of popular for those good looks that a talent or idol would have. And I think because of that experience, she knows how to promote herself.
I think so too.
She's been on TV shows. She's used to handling social media. She knows how to take pictures and stuff like that. And I think the smartest thing she ever did was when she started her YouTube channel, she immediately started collaborating essentially with Kai Asakura.
Mm-hmm.
And it just skyrocketed her views. Next thing you know, she's on the cover of Gong magazine. So
yeah, exactly.
been,
I think it seems like collaboration is the way to gain the viewership in YouTube now, right? Especially for the Japanese MMA people, right?
So, I mean, she was very brilliantly able to launch her social media presence very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's why Sakakibara is interested in her. She hasn't been like crazy knocking people out or anything. And
the fact that she made a cover of Gon Kaktogi magazine with this kind of record, I mean, that's kind of amazing. It tells you that she's popular because you put her on the cover, the magazine will sell. Right?
Well, it's funny too because the cover of the magazine is her dressed like a maid with Sakura who's dressed like a nerd. Right. And the theme of the article wasn't about her fighting career. It was about how all the fighters, like this new generation of YouTubers, has been emerging.
You know, it's so funny. Actually, I'll tell you this. About 7 years ago, I was debating with a Gon Kaktogi magazine. It's like, dude, you got to put Mizugaki on the cover. And he's one of the most successful guys. A series of meetings. Finally, they're like, oh, okay, we'll put him in the covers. You're going to have to do with Yushi and Hioki. So the very first cover Mizugaki got was with Yushi and Hioki. Fine, they both are very good, right? Established, especially UFC. After 5 straight wins in a row, I still contact Gon. Dude, you got to put solo Mizugaki on the cover. So it took 5 straight wins in the UFC to convince Gon Kaktogi to put a Mizugaki on the cover. Now a girl like Panchan, or even the girl like Itsuki Hirata, just because she's hanging out with Shinya Aoki, they're all making the cover of Gon magazine these days.
Well, I mean, you got to look at it this way. I mean, Panchan Rina fights for knockout. Her fight on their YouTube channel generates 1 million views. Everyone else's fights gets like 10,000.
Oh, I know.
So, I mean,
and she's really good at her bikini photos on Twitter and stuff like that. You know.
Well, she's promoted. She knows how to promote herself, and she's doing it well. Mm-hmm. And the interesting comment I thought that was made was by Sakakibara at the press conference. So they were like, they essentially said, "Oh, does this mean that RIZIN is getting into women's kickboxing?" And he kind of put the foot on the brakes and said, "Let's see how this goes, and then we'll decide." So to me, this seems like a market test that he's doing, because let's just do a little background. There's another promotion that's very popular, kickboxing promotion called RIZE.
RIZE,
yes. And over the past 2 years, they've been putting on a lot of women's events.
Yes.
And it seems to be getting more popular.
Mm-hmm. And remember, RIZE is very close with RIZIN too, so they're very easy to cross promote. You know,
exactly. And the thing he mentioned RIZE explicitly. He's like, I think RIZE has been doing some interesting things with the women. Notably, RIZE has been the former champion Erika Kamimura, who was a big superstar when she was active, is kind of heading their women's development, and so they have a bunch of young, talented kickboxers that RIZE has been developing, and all these girls are getting a lot of exposure on Abema TV. They're getting a lot, and they're growing their social medias. I mean, so they're all becoming quite popular. And even Panchan's opponent, Momoka, is from RIZE. And so I think that he wants to test this fight out and see what kind of numbers it gets, because Panchan Rina can bring in eyes that the other fighters won't bring in. Exactly. He has different elements. And if it goes well, I think he's going to keep it around and kind of foster the relationship with RIZE, bring fighters over to fight her. And then when the coronavirus is over, he already said he wants to bring foreign fighters over to fight her, and that'll be what they do.
Right. I mean, so in terms of her opponent, they have tons of them in Japan, right? So he can matchmake, he can do variety of matchmake.
Yeah. I mean, she's at like the perfect weight too, because I think this fight is at 46.5 kilos, something like that. And yeah, it's what it says, 46.5. And I mean, that is RIZE. It's a ton of girls in that weight class.
Oh yeah.
And Japanese fighters don't really cut weight too. So all the girls at 49 could probably easily make 46.5.
Exactly. So which means though, but even though they try to find some opponent from outside Japan, it's going to be a little difficult. Because not many girls are that light. So they might have to reach out to the Asia, which actually could end up being interesting too.
Well, when I say like reaching out to abroad, what I immediately think is like Thailand,
Korea, exactly. Korea.
China. That's where they're going to find these girls.
Southeast
They're not
Asia.
going to like, yeah.
Right. Which actually it could be interesting because that's where one championship's territory, in a way, in terms of kickboxing. They're pretty much dominating that,
That's where one championship's been doing really well. I mean, their kickboxing's outperforming their MMA.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Right.
Plus, I mean, also, I mean, the other thing is, I don't think, I mean, some people were mentioning like whether they think she's going to do MMA, and I think she even mentioned that. I don't think she's interested in MMA. She hasn't trained in any, she's only been training in kickboxing for, I think, like 5 years probably, and only been fighting as a professional for 2. So I think they're probably going to just try to keep her at kickboxing. And what I was actually kind of interested about was 46.5 kilos. That puts her within reasonable weight of Rinna.
Yeah, that could happen. Right.
And we have a Rinna kickboxing match or something.
Sure. No, but let me ask you this. Let's give this Momoka, the opponent, a little credit, because we are already talking like, all right, Pancha is going to win this one. Now, how is this opponent?
I'm a Momoka fan. I was actually, when I saw the press conference and I saw Pancha Reno walked on, I wasn't surprised at all. I'm like, they've been teasing this. They literally had a video where she met with Sakakibara. Like, they've been teasing that she would fight for RIZIN. But then when I saw Momoka walk behind her, I was excited because I first saw her 10 years ago when I went to Osaka and watched Ayaka Hamasaki beat Yuka Tsuji at Jules. Momoka fought on that card in a Jules kickboxing tournament that she won. And Momoka's got over 40 fights, so she's way more fights than Panchan. And what I thought was kind of interesting today on social media, I'm getting a little bit of a hint that I think the kickboxing world in Japan is supporting Momoka.
I think so too.
Because Panchan's kind of this new thing that's emerged recently, and she fought for one of the more obscure promotions, and maybe they feel like she's cutting in line. I don't know what it is, but Momoka just spent the last 3 days training with what looks like 20 of Rise's like best fighters. She was with their champion Hinata Terayama. She was with Sasori, who's fought Panchan Reina. So I think a lot, and if you looked on Twitter, all of these kickboxers were saying like, go Momoka, go Momoka. So I think the kickboxing world's behind her.
I mean, I think it's a natural reaction because Panchan only had 9 fights, right? And face it, why is she in there? Because she has that looks, and she shows her little tiny, butt and boobs on social network. It's not about beating top recognized names and stuff like that, right? So she hasn't proven herself. And remember, this is the world of girls. When some girls walks in there, just because of her looks, she gets more advantage over the real tough girls. You know what's going to happen. These tough girls are going to beat her up.
Well, I mean, it's the same story over and over again. I remember the American version of this, which is that people used to hate Felice Herrig.
Yeah, exactly. Right, yeah.
Because they'd say she just got fights for like her feet and booty pics and stuff like that. But I mean, when she came to the UFC, she performed quite well. So
right, exactly. She's a good fighter. She's a decent fighter. So we'll see how good the Panchan is compared to all these women in Japan, right?
So my theory here is, I think Momoka's had a little rough patch recently. I want to say I think she's lost like 3 fights in a row, but they're all against very good fighters. So I think RIZIN wants Panchan Reina to win. I think that they went out and found a fighter who has an established name, has a fan base, and has a ton of experience, so that if Panchan Reina wins, it looks like she beat a really good fighter. But that being said, there's so much unknown about Panchan Reina. She's only fought 9 times.
Right.
And Momoka's a 40-fight veteran, and this will be the biggest stage either one of them's ever competed on.
Yeah, so actually Momoka is a good yardstick, right, to measure where Panchan is really at. Now, let me ask you, is Momoka usually fights at this weight class, 46, 47?
I want to say so, but in that picture I'm looking at, I don't know if Panchan is wearing heels, but she looks a lot taller than Momoka in that picture.
Skinny too,
Yeah, she's very skinny. But Momoka is known for a very aggressive style, though. So I think another reason she's brought in is she's going to try to make the fight exciting. She's going to come forward. She's going to throw punches.
So obviously she'll come inside and do a little dirty boxing and stuff like that. So more like a Mike Tyson. So Panchan probably have to keep a distance and try to do right. I mean,
and
stick and move, but I don't know if she has that kind of skills. Actually, I'm actually sensing upset here. Actually, to tell the truth.
I mean, it has all the makings of that, but Panchan did beat this fighter named Sasori recently, who kind of fights similar to Momoka, like very aggressive, forward-going. Side note, if you guys are interested in weird Japanese characters, Sasori is an interesting follow. She wears a giant hat so you can't see her face and only speaks to her manager. So when she's at press conferences, her manager, who dresses like Bruce Lee, will listen to her. She'll whisper in his ear, and then he'll speak for her. So it's this whole crazy gimmick they have going. But so when they fought, Panchan Rinna won that fight. But I think she won, but she kind of stuck and moved. I'd say the worst thing that can happen in this fight is it's boring. If this fight is boring, I think it's the worst possible result because it won't get any attention and it'll just kind of fade away. And I think that's what kind of made Rinna unique was that for the weight class, Rinna has a ton of knockouts.
Right. She finishes fights.
Yeah, she finishes fights, which is what people love. I mean, casual fans and promoters love finishers.
Right. I mean, so this one, either one, whoever wins need to finish fights.
Right, exactly. But I'm excited to see Momoka here. It's nice to see an established fighter finally getting like her due.
Yeah. And
I don't want to. I mean, it's kind of like how people are writing off Emi Fujino really easily. And I mean, Ayaka Hamasaki should be the favorite going into the fight, but Emi Fujino's a tough lady who's never been finished.
No. And then she fought like Jessica Aguilar for the World Series of Fighting title fights and stuff like that. So she'll push you over, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, in a way, same for Panchan. I mean, Momoka is not a walk in the park, basically, right? So
right. I mean, plus, I mean, you can't take away 40 fights experience dwarfs 9 fights.
Oh yeah, exactly. Right. That's a big difference.
Plus, I mean, Momoka's been fighting and training for probably close to over 10 years, probably 12, 13 years, where Panchan maybe 5. So I see a lot of differences.
Yeah, so in terms of a normal sports theory, there's no way that Panchan could win, but who knows, right?
Yeah, who knows? And I like the fact that Momoka is from RIZIN because what this sets up with, Panchan Rinna wins this fight, who's available from RIZIN? You have Hinata Terayama, who trains with Tenshin Nasukawa, and she's a young, attractive fighter that's getting popular. But also, I mean, Tenshin's sister fights in RIZIN.
That's right, yeah.
So you could get a potential fight and just Tenshin may be leaving, but guess who's back? His sister.
Right. so that makes sense. So the RIZIN has a lot of interesting talents on the roster.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And here's let me mention this. There's a comment here. I didn't realize this about the Yuta. He says he did lose his money. He posted a video with his wife shaming him, and he cut his hair as a result.
Oh my god.
That's what it is. I guess he used to have long hair.
Yeah, he used to have like when he used to look like an idol, like a host, like those like host bars. He had like really long hair that was would go around his face.
That's why he's not. That's why maybe I couldn't recognize it. I thought he was a comedian, really. You know.
So he went from making 200 million yen a year, and he lost it all. That's absolutely nuts.
I don't know.
No wonder he's taking this fight and rising.
Personally, I don't understand the mentality of people who put how much money they make on their Twitter profile. I mean, unless if you're like doing the classes to teach, you know, like how to make money kind of stuff, you know.
It just seems like they're probably trying to copy the Floyd Mayweather thing, where you just. But the problem with that is you end up spending more money than you have, and next thing you know, all the money's gone.
You know what? Then maybe everybody should go look up the Sports Illustrated articles they did on Mike Tyson when he had to file for bankruptcy or something like that. Well, I don't know. He was close to file for bankruptcy. You know, he was spending like 145 minutes when he was making 141 kind of stuff. You know?
He's back, Shu. He made it all back. It's fine. The moral of the story is you can make it all back.
Exactly right. But who knows about this guy Yuta Kubo, right? Because he could be losing this fight. You know.
Yeah.
Right.
He's so dressed so ridiculously.
Yeah, I
can't stop laughing at it.
Yeah. Now, so Sakakibara mentioned there's 4 more shows until end of the year?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Now, did he mention October Yokohama show.
Yeah, it was at the. It's gonna be the same place. It's not at the Yokohama Stadium. It's at the
Yeah,
Pier.
Arena.
Yeah, Pier Arena.
Now, did
Which
he
I went
mention
to.
dates?
It's a pretty new arena. Yeah, I have the date pulled up. Give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. It's October 24th.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why I'm saying that is like I can do this little scoop here that actually they were planning on doing the show on October 23rd in Kobe originally.
Really?
Not in Yokohama, Kobe. But they moved to Yokohama. I don't know the reason why. Now, one of the maybe one of the reasons why they moved to Tokyo is probably maybe because of Corona, right? It's hard to get a fans in Kobe, blah, blah, blah. But also, I don't know if you realize that Deep is also on October 23rd.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can't put Deep and RIZIN on the same day.
No, especially since they have a working relationship together.
But the key point here is this, that just because October 23rd is Deep, 24th is RIZIN, then they're going to have a problem booking Japanese fighters because they have to share, right? So
I was thinking about this. I'm like, who's going to be on this October card? You've kind of hinted at it in the past. Glaring absence is Satoshi.
Right, Satoshi will probably get pushed back to October show because.
And then what? Clever.
Him in RIZIN 30, right? And Clever Koike, maybe,
yeah.
And maybe Reina,
Yeah.
And they need some stars there, right? Because Yokohama it's same as Tokyo show. It's like 15 minutes train ride. So
when you say they moved it from Kobe to the Pier Hall, my immediate thought is that's the venue they had I think it's where they had their first event when all of the Corona restrictions were happening.
Yeah, exactly right.
So maybe they're preparing to be like, hey, it's over 5,000 people a day. The numbers are going to be nuts. So let's just put it at the place we know we can do it at.
Exactly right. And what's the point of spending extra money bringing all the staff and everybody to Kobe at that point?
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. I don't know the actual reason. And Kobe was just this plan, so it was not a confirmed show, but we were mentioned that that's a possibility. So that's one show in Kobe, and he says 3 more. Or you're talking about 4 including RIZIN 30?
I think the 4 must have been including RIZIN 30 because in my mind, what that means is RIZIN 30, 31, and then maybe splitting the New Year's up into 2 events.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I can't talk about it, but I think New Year's Eve is only 1 now.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it would be 29th, 31st, but I have a feeling they will do another event on 29th, which has nothing to do with RIZIN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of hinted at that in the past. So then maybe with the 4th event, maybe they're trying to do one of those small shows. Like I think weren't they mentioning Okinawa and weren't they like referencing Okinawa or something?
That could possible. And also he also mentioned about possible small pay-per-view only show, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So nothing's confirmed yet, but so I think they're going to do 4 shows, and one is going to be probably a small show, which is like he's going to test a new type of shows. And if
Tanshan's popular, maybe he puts on another those kickboxers have quick turnaround times.
Exactly.
Nothing like MMA. So
let's say theoretically, if they ever do any so-called pay-per-view only shows in studio, just like we see on Bema TV, that means they're going to have to rely on pay-per-view sales, not the actual ticket selling, right? And as we talked about it, the RIZIN has this system that it gives the pace to the fighters for the share of pay-per-view shows when you order in Japan, right? Now, so they have the record of which fighters are actually selling pay-per-views. The clear numbers are there. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if they put Mikuru Asakura in there.
That'd be interesting because that makes sense because Mikuru also seems interested in trying new stuff.
Yep.
I mean, he has his own breakout TV show. He does those YouTube videos. So I think he'd be interested in that as well.
I mean, they could even do breakout on a small preliminary portion of the show and go into RIZIN. Who knows? And guy like Kyohei Hagiwara, in Japan, for some reason, very popular, right? I mean, he's a mediocre fighter, face it. But I think he's in the same weight class as Mikuru. So
yeah, they were talking a bunch of garbage back and forth to each other, weren't they?
Exactly. So they're pretty much setting up big fights there. You think that's going to be in October? I don't really think so. I think if they're going to do a big pay-per-view only studio shows, they have to come up with like 2-3 pretty good card, right?
Well, also, I mean, if they're doing the Pier Hall, I think the Pier Hall, what seats like with Corona probably see like 2,500 people.
Is that like 50%? Is that how it works? I mean, who knows in October, right? What kind of rules?
Exactly, but it's not going to be a lot of people. So I imagine they're not going to put that much star power on that card, but who knows?
Right. So, yeah, so I think this is going to be pretty interesting. They're going to split up all these stars between the actual audience shows versus studio pay-per-view show, if they were going to do studio pay-per-view show.
Yeah.
Let's say even though they go to Okinawa to do the show, face it, Okinawa doesn't have a big, huge venue.
No.
No. And, of course, it's more costly to do a show in Okinawa than in Tokyo, obviously. Yeah. So they're going to rely on many, many fighters locally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm hearing the rumors that Shuto Abema TV might be doing Valley to the Japan around the same time.
So that'd be cool because when Shuto did when they did Valley to Japan, like the newer one with Horiguchi, that was awesome. They had like some of the best fighters.
Oh yeah, Horiguchi versus Ishiwatari was at the Valley to the Japan, right?
Yeah, it was nuts. And it was so much better than what Shuto was putting on at the time. I was like, this guy, like, it also had Kana Asakura, I believe. Like, it had Megumi Fuji versus Vivi May.
Right. So I actually have a feeling that if Abema TV is putting really power behind this Valley to the Japan, I wouldn't say new brand, but another brand of a Shuto, that could be another movement in Japan that, RIZIN may have a trouble booking top Japanese fighters. You're going to have to compete against Abema and Valley to the Japan. So that's going to be interesting. So I don't know if they want to come through with the Okinawa show is my gut feeling, actually, to tell the truth. Maybe another show, but maybe near, Tokyo or even Osaka or Kobe that they skipped. Yeah.
Who knows what they can do, but
right.
It's so hard to plan in the future now with the pandemic going on.
Especially in Japan, because right now nobody knows the rules, right? Next month. Right. And right now nobody can travel to Japan, right? Unless you're a Japanese citizen.
So speaking of venues, I have a random question for you. So it was announced that the studio Studio Pier Hall, or the place where Pancrase holds all of their events in Tokyo is closing.
Closing, yeah.
And that was an awesome venue, first off. It was like a old discotheque, like DJ club.
Like it was a live house, right?
Yeah. So there's like a giant disco ball above the cage. There's like VIP rooms. Where do you think Pancrase will move for their new base of op? Because they seem to like to have some of the other promotions like to hop around.
Right.
But Pancrase is much more, I think, business focused.
Yeah, they're into like creating one home base and confirming the dates for the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of difficult because it was kind of the perfect venue for them because it was in Tokyo, but it wasn't in the middle of Tokyo, so it's probably a little cheaper. And it was a big venue, had a lot of seats. And just in Tokyo, it's like, where are you going to go?
Right. By the way, Okinawa does have a new arena which can host 10,000 people. That's good. So even though 5,000 people can just sell that tickets, right? Who is the star power there?
Just get a bunch of GIs to show up.
Well, you know what? Actually, when the King of the Cage did the show in, I think, in Okinawa or somewhere, it sold very well.
Yeah.
And, GIs and all these people show up. So, that could be an interesting show. Right. But anyway, so to go back to the venue, I think in Japan it's going to be very hard to find one because of the Olympics, they had those trials and everything else.
Yeah.
So all these other events, not only the sporting company and other promoters, they were put on hold for like a year. So they're just really scrambling to get all the venues and confirm everything right now. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I have a feeling they will end up going back and forth between Korakuen halls and like TDC halls and all the other promotions are doing.
I mean, I like TDC Hall and I like Korakuen Hall, but I just feel like it's hard. It'll be hard for Pancrase to do that model with them because they get booked so heavily for everything else.
I tell you this problem about the TDC Hall versus Korakuen. Korakuen Hall actually have seats about 1,800. TDC Hall is about actually only 22 or 23. But the fee is like almost 3 times more at TDC Hall.
Yeah, TDC Hall is like a way more modern venue. I could see how they could jack the price up.
Right. And on the other side of the coin, like it's really hard to believe this, but in Korakuen Hall, you're only allowed to rent either during the day or during the night. And there's a different rates for day rates and different rates for night
because
rates.
I think they always have morning and evening events.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know what that means? That means it's a very limited short window for bringing in, taking out, taking down, and stuff like that. So it almost makes very difficult for a promotion with the cage is to do the show on this half day portion. So you have to end up like renting the entire day, which is
that's why
feasible.
That's why Deep double books it. They do the Deep and Deep Jewels show on the same day.
Right. So that's the way to do it. So yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult for Pancras to find a venue. But hey, Sakai-san is a businessman who has a little bit of outside the frame of mind of Japanese MMA. So he may do the deal with some hotel, ballroom. Who knows? I've seen
that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
I have a feeling they're going to do that, to tell the truth. And hotel needs that too, because they're hurting for Corona.
Yeah, that'd be awesome too.
Mediocre level hotels. Now,
I love it. I love it when promotions do fights at interesting venues.
Yes.
Didn't Invicta FC? They did one time at like that in Kansas City at like the policeman's gym or something. It was like an old abandoned. It was like an old church.
Yeah, it was church with a boxing gym inside or something like that. I wasn't.
Yeah, it was nuts.
But yeah, everybody thought it was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And all right, so he also mentioned about the possible new ring ropes. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I feel like the ropes are getting talked more about now than they have in the past 20 years. But
okay.
So he was recently in a little meeting with Tenshin Nasukawa, and I think Sakakibara is worried because more people have fallen out of the ring recently than he can even remember ever falling out of the ring. And so they're trying to think of ways to fix it. And he was talking about, I think he said he thought the issue was that the ropes they were using to have that LED thing on them are different than normal ropes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Tenshin suggested maybe also having occasional vertical ropes to like kind of stop people from falling out of the ring. But if you have too many vertical ropes, then it just looks like a cage and it ruins the ring aesthetic.
Right. Actually, it's going to be very difficult to watch too, I think.
I don't like that. I mean, when they said that, I kind of like, I don't want them to change it because I get like flashbacks to those old shoot box rings that had like that little mesh net on the bottom of it that looked weird. And the good thing about the thing that makes the ring better is the fans can see so much easier.
Right. Exactly.
The fight going on. So,
but again, I think it's almost the same at this point because if you're sitting on the cage side or ring side, it's still kind of hard to see if fight hits the ground. So the best place to watch the fights is the riser section. So when you're ropes or cage, it's almost the same.
I always say like the best section to actually see is like the very front row of the first elevated section.
Yes, that's the best.
So you're like looking down into the cage a little bit.
Yes.
Or into the ring. But it's just kind of so I think he might have also been talking about like changing the shape of the ring itself.
Oh no!
But I don't want them to do that because that might look stupid. But I'd be all right if they put the occasional vertical rope and just to keep it from getting loose. But I don't want them to go crazy with it.
Can they go back to what the Dream did? Like, what about the white cage?
Oh, you mean the fishing nets? I heard those things hurt so bad.
It's different. Make it nice acrylic, but even make it like a transparent, like so you can see through.
I heard those nets hurt so bad.
But again, I mean, they could try something like that. But I guess but again, he wants to distinguish themselves from the other promotions, which actually makes sense. They have different rules, right?
I think that was a thing that was really smart. Was Dana White was giving him a bunch of crap about the ring, and I thought it was good of Sakakibara to kind of maintain that by having the ring, they're able to create their own unique brand.
Oh yeah, I agree. Right.
And I think that's important because there's so many promotions out there, and to have a unique image is priceless.
Right. I'm seeing the ring with the triangle rings too. Yeah. Remember the promotion like Yama? They had the little
they have like the elevated thing.
Elevated.
Now there's there's like the combat karate where they have like the elevated sides. Yeah, there's all sorts of crazy stuff.
Right. So anyway, let's get to our favorite subject of our episode is Rin Nakai update. So what happened to that girl? Oh, geez.
Well, she went on like a tirade one night, and I think it was like 7 just tweets about
in the middle of the night,
accusing people of falsely accusing Usami-san of like controlling her and stuff.
Yeah, here you go. It's August 4th.
If anybody ever, if anybody ever says anything bad about Usami-san, she'll never forgive them.
Right.
And things like that. So it also, I want to point out that there's a Japanese message board where one of like the Japanese fans actually took Rin Nakai's tweets and compared them with the message board where Usami-san is known to write, and found a lot of similarities in the word usage, the typos, and like the sentence structure of Usami-san's post and Rin Nakai's post. So I'm not saying that this isn't Rin Nakai writing. I'm just saying that accusations have been made that it is Usami-san writing these tweets.
Well, obviously, because there are a few interviews that Rin Nakai did very recently, and every time she speaks, everybody heard that Usami on the side was telling her what to say. Yeah. You know, like it was on the microphone, and it was just terrible. But couple interesting things she pointed out, or he wrote on this Twitter, is that she has some fight offers.
So
that's
a good
July.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, from the promotion that I would like to fight for. Which promotion is that?
So let's rewind a little bit.
Okay.
I think one of the things that fired off this tirade of tweets is Rin Nakai has been playing this like world's smallest violin, woe is me, everyone's out to get me, the world's against me, people are stopping me from getting fights. And then the promoter of Deep comes out and says that he's been offering her fights and she's been refusing them.
Right.
And so now all of a sudden it doesn't look like she's being blackballed. And so now she has to come out and say these tweets of like, oh, well, I was offered a fight, but the timing wasn't good. Or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's actually backpedaling, right? A little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because he kind of publicly called out on them. So like, hey, I've been giving you fight offers.
And then what she said she's concentrating more on foreign offers now, right?
You know what? I will tell you this. I'm telling you right now, I bet you there's at least one die-hard Rin Nakai fan who understands English is listening to our podcast. And I'm telling you this right now. I will tell Rin Nakai's manager to send email to Mick Maynard and just say, are you interested in Rin Nakai? And 99%, I think Mick will say no. All you have to do is show that email to Mr. Usami. And let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what's the best choice right now. That's all they have to do.
No, because their whole game plan is if somebody's not interested in them, that means that somebody sabotaged them.
Okay.
Somebody has gone to the UFC and poisoned their minds to Rin Nakai. It wasn't the fact that she demanded a crazy contract and then burned all of her bridges as she left the promotion. It's somebody else's fault.
Well, here's what it is, though. But you got to understand, nobody gains by blocking the Rin Nakais to get fights. Nobody. Who gains from that? No one.
Nobody. I mean, it's like a comic book villain. People don't actually do that. Like, if you're out there trying to stop people from getting fights, it's preventing you from getting your own fighters fights.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Just unnecessary calories. Also,
makes zero sense. You know. Yeah.
She seems obsessed with the Kana Watanabe fight too. She's always like passive aggressively talking about her, and I think Kana Watanabe has moved on, so it's time for Rin Nakai to move on. Just take a fight. I think
the reality is that they wanted to make Kana versus Rin happen in RIZIN. They tried it numerous times, but the timing wasn't right for Rin Nakai. So
whatever that means, yeah.
Right. Kana won't wait. I mean, it's her. She has her career, right? I mean, what the heck, you know?
I was laughing. I sent you a message the other day. Even one of her fans, like her fans are starting to post messages on her tweets like, oh, well, maybe you should just do this or something. Like they're trying to like tell her like, oh, maybe you should just take a fight, essentially. So,
but what's so funny, she still keep tweeting in English, says like she wants to fight for the UFC and please give me a chance and blah blah blah. And You know what? UFC matchmakers are very good at replying. It will only take one email to find out if that's even possible. Or even like say, even though he said no, then you could still get into the discussions. Then what would make it possible, right? Do I have to beat this person, or do I have to go over there and be a champion? Like for example, like she became a Bellator champion and fight out all the champion clause contract, defended title like 3-4 times, whatever. I'm pretty sure UFC would be interested in her, right?
Yeah. Well,
And I don't know why can't they think in that kind of like mentality.
It's also like outside of like the Shlemekos and Twitter, I can't think of like any fighter that's gotten into a major promotion by just who's already fought for the promotion and been not re-signed by just tweeting, "I want to fight for you."
Right.
Like some sort of contact needs to be made with the actual promotion, not through social media.
And I really wonder about that because again, I said this on the last episode that she's managed by the same management company who handles Horiguchi and Asakura. So there's no way that they can't talk to RIZIN, right? And
Yeah,
there's no
but
way they can't talk to Bellator. You know?
yeah, there's also no way they can control what Rin Nakai or her Usami do.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. I feel bad for it, you know?
Yeah.
Also, but you have to understand this. Another interesting choice she could have, right? She could have is bare knuckle. I'm serious. I bet you they'll show interest.
Well, yeah, they'd also pay her a ton of money, but
that too, right? And they'll put her name in North America. Maybe they. I don't know. I've never done any deal with bare knuckle, but maybe she could negotiate shorter terms of the deals.
Yeah, but bare knuckle seems to be where fighters go to die, not where they go to transition.
Yeah,
it's UFC to bare knuckle, not bare knuckle to UFC.
Plus, point is, you probably can't fight only once a year because you get injured every time you fight. So then her choice should be the Invicta then.
Yeah.
No, I don't
she
know.
Should try Invicta. She's anything. Her choice should be anything, right? Not just sitting on the sidelines doing absolutely nothing.
Well, what a waste of like talent, or even any human being's career on anything. I mean, this is just the biggest waste of time for her, and it's
well. First off, not to cut you off, but I mean, there's an established way to get in the UFC if you're a woman in Japan. Yes. And it's the way she got into the UFC in the first place.
Right.
Join Pancrase, win a bunch of Pancrase fights against established foreign fighters, and the UFC will probably bring you in. And they brought in Rin Nakai, they brought in Shuri Kondo, all those people from Pancrase.
Right.
She just needs to start fighting and beating people and winning.
Right. Or even Shuto or RIZIN or Deep, it doesn't matter. She's got to fucking fight like 3-4 times, right? Yeah. And they win. So
there's no. What are the odds that a major promotion looks at someone who hasn't fought in 2 years?
Very slim. That would be the first question you ask.
Yeah, you just you're not fighting actively.
Unless if this promotion happen to have a 125 star that they want to promote, then they for sure if they can, we can beat this girl who hasn't fought in 2 years but happen to have a very good record, and that would be the only way.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I hate to say this, but that happened in Reina's opponent too. I won't mention names. There was one of her opponent I think it was undefeated who hasn't fought in 2 years.
King Reina or Reina?
Reina Kubota. I gave a little sarcastic email to Matchmaker when he found that opponent. I'm like, you're really doing a good job. So that could happen,
Yeah. Well, I mean, not just Japanese promotion, but any promotion is good at just digging up someone that has some semblance of a name. I thought you were talking about when they had King Reina fight Shane Baszler. It's like Shane's still fighting. It's like, oh, okay. I thought she was pro wrestling. But
yeah, I mean Caitlin Young too, right? But they're very legit fighters,
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, exactly. So I wish, and then Rin Nakai could also try, Bellator. Who knows? I mean, okay, PFL doesn't have a girls on that division, but she could create something,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
well,
too bad.
She's unique enough, but I know we say it all the time, but she's unique enough and has enough of a fan base that I think any promotion would want her. She just has to play ball.
Right, but I guess they don't understand that, right? In a way, they really don't understand their own value, I would say.
Well, also, I think you mentioned this last week, but I think RIZIN's just kind of left it to Sayaki-san.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're like, deal with Sayaki because they don't want to deal with it. and Saki's offering her fights, and she just doesn't want to do it. Apparently, she's only interested in fighting abroad.
Right.
Doesn't realize that to fight abroad, she probably needs to win a couple fights locally. So
yeah,
just ends up being a giant mess.
Anyway, so just to finish up our
yes,
let me just explain that I think a lot of fans are kind of wondering what happened to Ren. As you could see, I think Duke Rufus made the announcement on Instagram that he will be coaching Ren Hiramoto. And actually, original plan was for him to actually arrive in the beginning of August, but we had to push it back to after Labor Day for a few reasons. Of course, the Corona is one reason, but also the team has a bunch of fighters, and they got a fighter fighting for contender series in October. Obviously, Anthony Pettis is going to be busy in PFL, playoffs and stuff like that. So we have to kind of figure out the right timing for him to join, right? And
plus, you have Woodley over there fighting
exactly
fighting Jake Paul,
right? But they have that guy, just won the Bellator, and stuff like. So they're a really good, solid team, and I want him to have a good, 2-month, 3-month over there, and he needs that. So
it's kind of perfect because, I mean, it's a gym that specializes in turning kickboxers into MMA fighters.
Exactly. And, Duke himself was a K1 fighter, right?
Yeah.
So Ren, same thing, K1 coming to MMA. So he has to be more, he's get motivated about that. And it's very important, It's not
Wasn't
about just
Duke's brother,
right? And training.
Wasn't Duke's brother a big K1 fighter too?
Yes, Rick actually fought Francisco Filio in the Tokyo Dome. Yeah,
exactly.
So they understand. So Duke understands the Japanese MMA, that world of Japanese, fight business and stuff like that, and a good thing, a bad thing about it. So I think he's a good coach and a perfect coach for Ren. And just to explain, many of the fans in Japan was asking me, how come you don't send him to ATT? Horiguchi's there. But you gotta understand. ATT is
it's different.
It's full of top world talent, and I don't want him to go get demolished, right? And on top of that, I don't even know if they'll take him.
ATT seems more like, this is just my outside observation, ATT doesn't seem like they really develop fighters. They seem to take fighters that are already created and just polish them.
Yeah, that too, right? They do develop.
Horiguchi claimed at Yamamoto, even with Crazy B all those years, then went there. So they seem to take already successful MMA fighters and just elevate them even more.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually exactly, and that happens to many, many teams when you really look at it, though, right? Because same with Mizuki and Naoki, they were training Hakushinkai, but they came to Cerro Longo and they got elevated, so they got polished and stuff like that. Same thing, but in terms of Ren, we're gonna have to work with the beginning.
Right, exactly.
He's 0-1 in MMA. Let's face it.
Plus,
so.
I mean, Duke Rufus, there's been a lot of he's trained a lot of smaller fighters there too. I mean,
yes,
Pettis brothers, Rosamund Muniz got her start there.
Right.
And so trained a lot of smaller fighters.
Also, you have to understand, when you look at the team, you have to look at the training partners situations too. So it's better to have a lot of amateurs and, start up a pros in similar weight classes, obviously. Right?
Does this have anything to do with the fact that you feel more comfortable with Ren living in, Michigan or Wisconsin, as opposed to Miami or Tampa,
or somewhere where cannabis is legal?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm telling you, really. And also, but every time it's a really interesting point is that I'm also thinking about sending Kuramoto to somewhere in America. And there's two type of Japanese fighters there, and I won't say names, but some fighters prefer to go with another Japanese guys so they don't feel lonely, so they can get together. I do not like that, actually. I don't think that's good. And
they tend to isolate and not take advantage of the opportunity.
Exactly. And a guy like Hiramoto and Kuramoto agrees with me. And Kuramoto's so funny. He calls me. It's shoot, one of the fighter asked me if he could go with me to this American gym. I don't know how to say no. So can you say no? I will explain, But the point is, yes, he wants to be there alone. He wants to associate with the fighters here, learn,
Yeah, it's like when Kana Asakura went and has living with Alima Lay McFarlane. You want to kind of go take advantage of the whole experience.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's possible, but I haven't talked to you yet. I would love Kuramoto to come and maybe live with Aljamain for a month, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Right. So that's what he needs. He needs a change of scenery, see something different, get good idea, hint from her
Plus,
innings too.
if he's out in Vegas, he'd be able to just try so many different places too. He'd be able to go to the PI. All those gyms are out there.
I can also maybe ask, he could also train with Robert Drysdale and BJJ.
Yeah, exactly.
Extreme Couture. There are a lot of options there. So
yeah,
Lin's case is about transforming from rookie kickboxer into MMA fighter.
Yeah.
Now, Hiramoto's case is different. He already had 9 fights. He's an established MMA fighter. Now he needs to do different scenery, different training environment, just to feel and see, and even like in a good word, in a sense, steal what they're good about, right?
Yeah. You have to get a change of pace, get some new sparring partners, see some new stuff.
The majority of Japanese fans seems to not understand. They think ATT is the only team in America.
Well, there's this weird obsession with Mike Brown. They're like,
Mike Brown's a great coach. There's nothing again, he's awesome. Right.
Didn't you hear though? He invented the calf kick.
No, calf kick actually came from Brazil. We all know that.
Yeah.
I actually.
Did you see that crazy fight where Jose Aldo checked the?
Yeah, I saw that.
He did the impossible. He stopped the no defense attack.
Right. No, but I remember even in early 2000, the ATT fighters like Wilson Gobela was doing calf kick.
Oh yeah,
Brown was sarcastic back then. Yeah,
because Japanese fans don't really pay attention to I'd say the average Japanese MMA fan doesn't pay that much attention to outside of Japan promotions. Exactly. So when a calf kick happened, they were like, "What is this crazy magic that all of us?" And it's just like, no, it's not that new. Everyone's been doing it. Right. It's not unique to ATT.
I think Pride Grand Prix, maybe 2006, Ricardo Arona knocked down Vanderlei Silva with the calf kick.
Yeah, and it's just also, I mean, ATT is a great gym, but there's a ton of gyms. Everyone can't train at the same gym.
Right, and I say Naoki Inoue got his leg fractured by calf kick by Matt Chanel, which was 20 when he was 21 years old, whatever. So I think that's nothing new, right?
No. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because people are wearing those Marion hats that even say calf kick.
Yeah.
Those calf kicks were selling like hotcakes after the
Marion is a very good company who's been supporting all of our clients. And
I think they're hilarious. I love they have awesome shirts because a lot of the shirts, to me, some of the companies, they slap way too many advertisements on them.
Yeah.
Where the Marion shirts, I like to have a kind of a clean look to them.
Yep.
And you can tell that they're passionate about MMA because when you go to the events, there's a little Marion section of all their employees.
Right.
They have a giant bazooka camera taking pictures.
Exactly. And I think it's almost Marion is ready to actually launch more campaign to outside Japan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I think for those who is listening to this outside Japan, I'm going to do this officially. Check out the models that Marion Apparel has been using. Half of them are very, very popular adult film stars. I mean, that's very good marketing tactics going outside Japan. I think that's what's going to happen.
Isn't one of their shirt designs drawn by Marika Hase?
I think so too.
I think it is. I mean, it is her. It's it's like F cancer or something. They have an anti-cancer shirt.
Right.
So they've definitely got some interesting marketing.
And also, this is coming up soon. That do you know this thing for Art Battle by MTV? They have this thing for artist battles and they draw, And there's a Japanese guy who the only Japanese guy who won this MTV Art Battle, I think 3 times.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he's actually did the design for Marion Apparel. It's going to come up soon.
Cool.
It's going to be very interesting stuff, So they're doing the very interesting marketing, which has nothing to do with MMA, but I just kind of had to mention because I think many fans outside Japan is wondering what the hell this Marion Apparel is, right?
Yeah, because I saw Esther Lin commenting on Twitter, where do you buy a Marion shirt and stuff like that.
Right.
People are interested, and I like it because you see young fighters Saori Oshima, the Deep Jewels champion, has twins, and so it was difficult for her to train. And she actually tweeted out recently that because of these sponsorships she's been getting from companies like Marion and that, she's now able to afford a babysitter so she can go train and stuff. So these little sponsorships, even though they're not giving people these ton of money, it changes the fighters' lives.
It does.
They're able to start training more.
Right, and maybe some people may think, it's only $500, or even that. It makes difference, right? You can hire a babysitter, right? Or you can pay for the 2 gyms fee, whatever, right? So, Yeah. So no, the sponsors are great. So hopefully they'll do better when they come into States.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure after this, you check out all the models. A lot of people will check out all the models.
smart
That's a
thing.
very smart tactics, right? It's universal.
It's kind of like for like the people outside of Japan. It's kind of different too, because a lot of the girls that are on that scene in Japan are like famous outside of that scene. They like surpass it. Right. They're like regulars on TV and stuff. So it's kind of interesting.
So actually, sometimes I joke with fighters and coaches like, oh, so I got so-and-so Marion Apparel sponsorship. So most of the coaches are like, oh, should I go say, hi to Mr. President at the shop and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, you could do that. You might bump into some top hot adult star. They're like, all right, I'm going there.
Their shop looks cool, though. I was actually looking at pictures
they just
today.
Expanded to the double the size, and they're making a little gallery with a fight to use.
Yeah, they have all the fight worn outfits and everything.
Yeah, actually, cool. I started that. I suggested that to Mr. Nishida, the Baron Apparel president. They should be doing that, and part of the sponsorship deal, I actually started offering them, so I can get my fighter more money. Yeah. But I think it's good.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean,
it's cool because when you go to the store, you can go look at it. And then you want to buy stuff.
Right. And besides, if you're a sponsor, you're paying for it. You want to feel good, right?
Exactly.
It really is, because it's really hard to figure out the return on investment on something like that. Yeah. So that's my intention. So, well, anyway, so I think we did talk enough today again.
Yep.
All right. So
let's just say that while this month has been slow, September is going to be absolutely nuts.
Oh, I know. So
September, we have RIZIN, we have RIZE. We have K1, we have Deep Jewels, Pancrase, Shuto, everybody. There's everybody in September.
Oh, that's why I hope fucking Japanese government will make up their mind on the rules and everything else, because I feel sorry for everybody, Yeah.
And I know Pancrase still has a couple events where they can do it at the place hasn't closed yet. But if they did close suddenly, they'd be screwed, because all of those venues got to be booked in Tokyo.
Oh, I know. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but many of the artists in Japan started doing the tours, and they started accepting those drawings for the tickets and stuff like that. But I don't know what the rules are going to be, right? How can they sell tickets? I don't
have this weird feeling, though, where Japan just doesn't care anymore. Like, the people just aren't willing to accept it anymore. Like, they're just going out. Like, it's like they have like what they call like yasashi, like their soft quarantine rules, but people just seem to have rejected it and are doing what they want to do now.
It's not a lockdown order. It's just a request. Yeah. So you actually don't have to say no to the request, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, because
I think people are tired of waiting for 2 years.
No, because my idol Yazawa just did the drawing for the fan clubs, and of course I applied for it. And there was like over 200,000 people apply for these tours. I'm like, oh, God damn it. Then I realized, how can they sell tickets if you don't know what the government's going to decide to do, right? Because he has a Budokan shows 5 days in a row. Are you going to sell 5,000 tickets each, or 15,000 each?
I think the rule seems to be, if you sell the tickets, the government's never made anybody unsell tickets.
Right. So that should apply to the RIZIN and all the MMA shows too.
That guy really is your idol, because remember that time I ran into you? You were waiting outside the Tokyo Dome. I was going into a kickboxing show at Korakuen Hall.
Right.
And the line for his concert was so long, it went past the Korakuen Hall, and you were there.
And I remember that you thought I'm going to the fight show too, right? But next time
you go to I didn't know you're going to shoeboxing.
I'm not going to that fight show. So
yeah. Izawa going to the Izawa show. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
No, I actually bumped into many fighters there in the show too.
That's crazy.
Yeah, did you know that he actually sang one song in K1 New Year's Eve show a long time ago?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he showed up in the little one song right before Kid Yamamoto's.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know.
They always show like his crazy fans. His fans are so hardcore. Like they have like the entire semi truck is like decked out to look like in homage to him, or the roofs of their houses spell out his name.
The Yazawa Bento, Yazawa Soup Jar, Yazawa bottle holders, and everything for my sons. And I'm getting vetoed by my wife now.
Too many. That's a mistake. You just have to stop asking. Just order it, and it shows up.
Order it, right? I'm just going to change it. But anyway,
get this. We've had this forever. We've always had this.
Right. So actually, he once used Onodera, the kickboxer, in his music video too.
Oh,
So
really?
it seems like he's not associated with the MMA at all. Just a little bit, you know?
Yeah, but I think what Tenshin Nasukawa's dad was brilliant in having
Oh,
his son choose that for his
Kenshin
walkout
Nasukawa
music.
is a die-hard Yazawa fan, too. Same
Yeah.
as me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, I got going
Perfect.
forward, so but let's stop here. You know?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so
Well, I will see you again in 2 weeks.
all right, I'll see you, everybody.
Yep.
Bye.